Hi everyone, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time. Welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books, and today I am recording a very belated book haul from the month of June. If you have been following along at home, I have already recorded and released one book haul, which was my holiday book haul, but I still also had a bunch of other books that I had picked up in the month of June. So now that we're in August, let's get into it, because I now have another backlog of books to show you from July. But when I had a look, I decided to keep them separate, just because otherwise it would be an unwieldy amount of books to talk about in one video. So let's get straight into it. I've divided these up into new books and secondhand books, which is what I usually do. So I'm going to show you the new books first, and then I will show you the secondhand books. So I'm going to start with a very beautiful book that I have picked up. This is the... I forget what these are called now. Let's find out. Anyway, it's Persuasion, which is my favourite Jane Austen. It has this sort of like translucent slip cover, and then a really beautiful illustration. Illustrated classics? No, surely not. Let's find out. They are called Painted Editions. Here we go. The Harper Muse Classics Painted Editions. And it has a really beautiful artwork. The artwork is cover art by Lacey Fowler. So yeah, this is really, it also has gold foil edges. So yeah, this is really a book for my collection. I've already read Persuasion. I own several copies of it, but as it is my favourite Austen, I feel like this is kind of like my thing. So anyway, I'm very happy to now have this in my collection, because yeah, it is absolutely beautiful. And definitely something that I'm going to treasure for a very long time. Okay, moving on now, I'm going to show you these two together because they're by the same author. So on two very separate shopping trips, I purchased two Clare Keegan books. So one is So Late in the Day by Clare Keegan, and the other is The Forester's Daughter by Clare Keegan. Both are published by Faber. One is a hardback edition and one is this sort of small paperback with tiny French flaps, which is kind of cute. So yeah, and these are, I'm not sure, Faber Stories is the collection that these ones are, but I don't know that this one is part of a collection. Let me tell you about So Late in the Day. After an uneventful Friday at the Dublin office, Cathal, I know I'm saying that wrong, I'm so sorry, I can never remember how to pronounce that name, Cathal faces into the long weekend and takes the bus home. There, his mind agitates over a woman named Sabine, with whom he could have spent his life had he acted differently. All evening, with only the television and a bottle of champagne for company, thoughts of this woman and others intrude, and the true significance of this particular date is revealed. So that is So Late in the Day. And The Forester's Daughter Clare Keegan's mesmeric story takes us into the heart of the Wicklow countryside and of the farming family of Victor Deegan, with his three teenagers, the milking and the mortgage. When Deegan finds a gun dog and gives it as a present to his only daughter, his wife is filled with foreboding at this seeming act of kindness. As the seasons pass, long-buried family secrets threaten to emerge. So yeah, very excited to have those. I have very much enjoyed the two Clare Keegan books that I have read before. So glad to have those in my collection and to be able to pick them up when I'm ready for some more Clare Keegan. Another Faber book that I picked up, and I can't recall where I heard about this one or who recommended it, but I had it in my wish list, I think, and then picked it up. So it's called Maud Martha by Gwendolyn Brooks. And this one says, Maud Martha Brown is a little girl growing up on the south side of 1940s Chicago. Amidst the crumbling taverns and overgrown yards, she dreams of New York, romance her future. She admires dandelions, learns to drink coffee, falls in love, decorates her kitchenette, visits the jungly hovel, hears speakers on campus, guts a chicken, buys hats, gives birth. But her lighter-skinned husband has dreams too, of the Foxy Cats Club, other women, war, and the scraps of baffled hate, a certain word from a saleswoman, that visit to the cinema, the cruelty of a department store Santa Claus are always there. Published in Britain for the first time, Maud Martha, 1953, is the only novel by Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Gwendolyn Brooks. A radical poetic collage, it is an extraordinary portrait of an ordinary life, one lived with wisdom, humour, protest, rage, dignity, and joy. So it sounds really, really good. So, yeah, very excited to have this one and to get to it at some point soon. Now, as part of my new books that I've picked up, I've got 3 non-fiction books to talk to you about. This one is Pastrix, The Cranky Beautiful Faith of a Sinner and Saint by Nadia Bolz-Weber. This is, so a Pastrix is, hang on, I'll just read it. I'll stop trying to remember what it is and read it from the back of the book. Pastrix, a derogatory term used by Christians who refuse to recognize female pastors. Heavily tattooed and foul-mouthed, Nadia Bolz-Weber, a former stand-up comic, sure as hell didn't consider herself to be religious leader material, until the day she ended up leading a friend's funeral in a smoky downtown comedy club. Surrounded by fellow alcoholics, depressives, and cynics, she realized these were her people. Maybe she was meant to be their pastor. Using life stories from living in a hopeful but haggard commune of slackers to surviving the wobbly chairs and war stories of a group for recovering alcoholics, from her unusual but undeniable spiritual calling to pastoring a notorious con artist, Nadia uses humorous narrative and poignant honesty to portray a woman who is both deeply faithful and deeply flawed, giving hope to the rest of us along the way. I, again, can't remember where I heard about this one. It's been on my wish list for ages. It came on sale. I picked it up. The other one, for the same reasons, it was on my wish list, went on sale, picked it up, so I can't recall where I heard about it, is Late Victorian Holocausts, El Nino Famines and the Making of the Third World by Mike Davis. So I am always very interested in the sort of the impacts of colonialism, both in the past when it was sort of in its heyday and also the ongoing effects of colonialism. And I know that this one is about it. Now, I've just remembered that this was the book that doesn't actually have a blurb on the thing. So I'm just going to very quickly look it up on my phone and I will read you the story graph blurb for this book. So, Late Victorian, there it is, okay. Okay, so it says, examining a series of El Nino-induced droughts and the famines that they spawned around the globe in the last third of the 19th century, Mike Davis discloses the intimate, baleful relationship between imperial arrogance and natural incident that combined to produce some of the worst tragedies in human history and to sow the seeds of underdevelopment in what later became known as the Third World. So, that is basically what it is about, and I don't know if this is the kind of book that I would read cover to cover or if it would be one that I just sort of dip into. The chapters are divided in such a way that it's by time. So the first part is called The Great Drought and it goes from 1876 to 1878. The second part, that includes several chapters. The second part is El Nino and the New Imperialism, 1888 to 1902. And then part 3 is Deciphering ENSO, which I don't know what that is. And then part 4 is The Political Ecology of Famine. And that one goes to 3 parts of the world, India, China, and Brazil, to illustrate the points. So anyway, it seems like it's going to be quite dense, but yeah, it might be one that I just sort of dip in and out of. Or I may end up reading it cover to cover, who knows, but I'm excited to have that one in my collection. And the last of the new books that I picked up in June was Innovation, and this is part of the First Knowledges series, which is edited by Margot Neal. This one is Innovation, Knowledge and Ingenuity, and it's written by Ian J. McNiven and Lynette Russell. So this one... yes, Innovation, Knowledge and Ingenuity reveals novel and creative practices such as body shaping, cremation, sea hunting with the help of suckerfish, building artificial reefs for oyster farms, repurposing glass from Europeans into spearheads, economic responses to colonization, and a voice to Parliament. So this series is all about the first knowledges. So it's the knowledge of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are our first Australians, our the original inhabitants of the land of Australia. And this series is looking at different aspects of culture and also history and what we know from evidence and records and so on about the sort of different aspects of how Aboriginal people managed the land and interacted with the land, invented things, etc., etc. So it's a really interesting series. I already have the other 6 books in this series. This is the most recent one, and I suspect that more are coming. So yeah, this is the 7th title in the series. Yep, and it's saying that the next book in the series, Medicine, is going to be published this year. So I'll have to keep an eye out for that one as well. But yeah, very excited to have this one in my collection. All right, let's move on now to the second-hand books. And I'm going to start with the non-fiction part of that. First of all, with a book that I have actually already read, which is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. This was his memoir of his childhood growing up in South Africa under apartheid and being born a crime, meaning that he should not have existed because it was illegal for black people and white people in South Africa at the time to have children together. So he should not have existed at all. And yeah, so he sort of talks about that aspect of it, but then also just kind of goes into what it was like growing up under apartheid when he was very young, and then as that policy is lifted, and then sort of the ripples of it afterwards, and the changes that sort of came in as he was like a teenager. So yeah, very, very interesting book, and I do recommend. It was a really interesting read. But yeah, I'm very glad to now have a copy of it. It was so cheap. It was like $3 or $4. So I'm really glad that I was able to find a copy to add to my collection. Okay, let's move on. So the next book is one that I picked up also on the same secondhand trip, where it was at a Lifeline bookstore, and they often have really modern stuff, like really recent releases will come into it. And then I also just sort of love, one of the things I love about secondhand shopping is sort of the serendipity of finding something really interesting that you've never heard of, and as well as the like, oh my gosh, I've just found something that I really, really wanted, and it was $5. That's also a really top-notch part of secondhand book shopping. But this one is definitely the former. So this is one I had not heard about, but it sounded so interesting when I came across it. And I was definitely drawn to the very cool spine of the book, and it's called Rosetta by Alexandra Joel. It looks really beautiful on the spine. The cover looks really beautiful also. And the byline is A Scandalous True Story. So this is actually a story about a woman who is the grandmother of the author. Grandmother? Great-grandmother. I think grandmother. Anyway, I'm sure it will tell us. Tell us on the back of the book. So it says, headstrong and beautiful, in 1905 Rosetta escaped her safe Melbourne life, deserting her respectable husband and 5-year-old daughter to run away with Zeno the Magnificent, a half-Chinese fortune-teller and seducer of souls. The pair reinvented themselves in London, where they beguiled European society and risked everything for a life of glamour and desire. Rosetta said she was American. Zeno claimed to be a brilliant Japanese professor. Together they attracted the patronage of famous writers, inventors and scientists, lords and ladies, dukes and duchesses. Rosetta revelled in a life few women of her time would have dared to embrace, yet all the while she hid her secret shame, the daughter she had left behind. This is the compelling story of Alexandra Joel's quest to uncover the truth about her scandalous great-grandmother, so it was the great-grandmother, and the shocking century-old secret she would discover at the heart of her family. So, just sounds like a really interesting character, and I'm interested to learn more about her life. There are also photos in the centre part of it, including photos of her new partner, which I'm going to see if I can very quickly find. So I know I've seen them. Yeah, so I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but here they are. And they just look like really intriguing people, and an intriguing couple. At a time where that would just not have been seen. So, very excited to have this one now, and hopefully to get to it very soon. A very little one now, and that is The Girl with the Dogs by Anna Funder. And this is the author of the book Wifedom that I read last year. I think I read it, and really, really enjoyed Wifedom, which was a book about George Orwell's wife, and sort of looking at her life, and then also sort of thinking about the concept of being a wife and what that means in our society today. But this is a very small little volume, and it says, and this is a short story, I believe, or perhaps a novella, I'm not sure. I never know what the sort of delineating magic number is. It's part of the Penguin Specials. So this one is 57 pages long, so I don't know if that makes it a short story or a novella. I'm going to say novella. So it says, amid the debris of her friends' relationships, Tess has a marriage that's comparatively unscathed, but she's at a hinge moment, poised between her present life and the one she decided against in her youth. What could she have made of her life had she chosen differently, and what will she risk to find out? Deceptively concise, The Girl with the Dogs is a masterful story about life from beginning to end, and about the brief moments of choice that have enduring consequences. So there you go. So yeah, this was an author buy because I enjoyed Wifedom so much, so I'm interested to read some fiction from Anna Funder. The next one that I have is a book that I already own on as an e-book, but I found a paper copy for a very cheap price. It was $4, and that is The Henna Wars by Abida Jaigidar. I apologise, I'm sure I have mispronounced that surname. And this is a YA, I believe. It's definitely, it's Hachette Children's, is who put it, children who puts it out. So anyway, I think it's YA. So on the back it says, I want to think this is just something girls do, that it means nothing, but I am 100% sure the way she's looking at me is not the way friends look at each other. Nishat's parents say she can be anyone she wants as long as she isn't a lesbian. She doesn't want to lose her family, but she also doesn't want to hide who she is, which only gets harder once Flavia walks into her life. Beautiful and charismatic, Flavia takes Nishat's breath away, but as their lives become tangled, they're caught up in a rivalry that gets in the way of any feelings they might have for each other. Can Nishat find a way to be true to herself and find love too? So, I obviously I already own it, I'm interested to read this one, and just hadn't gotten around to it, so I was glad to find a paperback copy, because I usually prefer to read them in that format. Another book that I own multiple books by this author, but I don't think I've ever read anything from her, is Girl with a Pearl Earring by Tracey Chevalier. So I didn't already own this one. I own several other Tracey Chevalier books, but I don't own this one. Well, now I do, but I didn't when I picked it up. Again, this was only $4, so it was a good bargain. And I don't know if I need to necessarily tell us what this is about, because I'm sure we are all familiar with the movie, although I haven't seen it myself. I'm familiar with the basic storyline, but basically you've got the painter Vermeer, and he has a maid, a new maid in the household, and then she sort of becomes his muse, and is the muse, or the model that he used when he painted Girl with a Pearl Earring. But I think it's sort of like a bit of a scandalous kind of situation, because he, I'm assuming, is married and, yeah, he has 6 kids and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, very interesting story, but yeah, glad to now have that one in my collection. Okay, let's keep going. A few more to show you. I picked up The Wind Knows My Name by Isabel Allende. This is a lovely hardback edition, and I can't remember how much I paid for it, but it was definitely pretty cheap for me to be getting it secondhand. So this one was, let me just see when it was published, because this was one of her more recent ones. So this was published in 2023. So it says, Vienna, 1938. Samuel Adler is 5 years old when his father disappears during Kristallnacht, the night his family loses everything. Determined to get her child to safety, Samuel's mother secures a spot for him on a Kindertransport train out of Nazi-occupied Austria to England. He boards alone, carrying nothing but a change of clothes and his treasured violin. Arizona, 2019. 8 decades later, Anita Diaz and her mother board another train, fleeing looming danger in El Salvador and seeking refuge in the United States. But their arrival coincides with the new family separation policy. Torn from her mother and alone at a camp in Nogales, 7-year-old Anita escapes reality to Azabahar, a magical world of the imagination. Intertwining past and present, The Wind Knows My Name traces the ripple effects of war and immigration to tell an unforgettable story of family, home, and sacrifice, a testament to the children who survive the most unfathomable dangers and never stop dreaming. So it sounds like a really interesting book. I've only ever read one Isabel Allende book, and that is... I can imagine the cover in my mind, but I can't think of the name of it. Does this have a list of the books that she's written? Yes, The House of the Spirits, the one right at the top of them. Perhaps that was her first book, maybe, which was a big family epic. And it was definitely somewhat hard going at times, but it was ultimately a very enjoyable book. And very interesting book. So I'm very keen to read some more Isabel Allende, and I now have this one to add to my collection. The next one is also a very recent release, and that is Dirt Poor Islanders by Winnie Dunn. Winnie Dunn is an Australian author, and this either came out last year or this year. I have a feeling it might be this year. Yep, 2024. So yeah, when I found this as a new release secondhand book, very, very exciting. So it says, for Meadow Reed, a half-Tongan, half-white girl, the world is bigger than the togetherness she has grown up in. Finding her way means pushing against the constraints of tradition, family, and self until she becomes whole in her own right. Meadow is going to see that being a dirt poor islander girl is more beautiful than she can ever begin to imagine. Dirt Poor Islanders is a potent, mesmerizing novel that opens our eyes to the brutal fractures navigated when growing up between two cultures, and to the importance of understanding all the many pieces of yourself. So yeah, very excited to have this one, and hopefully to get to it very soon. Another book that I've picked up that, again, I believe is a relatively recent release. Let me just check the author's note. Where is the copyright page? It's at the back. How weird. Yes, 2023. So, anyway, this one is called Salt River Road by Molly Schmidt. Now, I am not 100% convinced that I'm going to like this book. I mean, no one can ever be 100% convinced they're going to like a book, but I saw this one. I think the cover of it is absolutely beautiful. It has very beautiful art on it. But when I read about it, and also because there's an Aboriginal element to the story, but the author is not Aboriginal herself, so it's not own voices. So I'm just not 100% convinced. And I also believe my mum read this book and was a bit unsure about it herself. But anyway, I found it for $4, so I decided to give it a go. So the premise of the book is, in the aftermath of their mother's death, the lives of the 5 Tetley siblings fall apart. Rose is abandoned by her beloved brother Frank, while their father Eddie is undone by his grief. When Noongar elders Patsy and Herbert encounter Rose marching away from the mess, they take her home in a storm of red gravel dust that stirs up memories Eddie Tetley would rather forget. Rose finds herself welcomed into a home where she has the chance to discover the true power of belonging. With the help of Patsy and Herbert, she will find a way to begin to heal not only her family's pain, but wounds hidden for a generation. So we'll see if it's something I'm okay with as I get started on it, but I am happy to have it in my collection now to give it a go. The next one I've got is, I believe, by an Aboriginal author, I'm pretty sure, and it was published in 2020. So the book is Song of the Crocodile by Nadia Simpson. Yes, so she's the winner of the Black and White Writing Fellowship, which I imagine would be an Aboriginal Writing Fellowship. So yeah, yes. This will be less problematic in terms of me having to decide whether I'm okay with how it's all playing out. All right, so it says, Darn Moor, the gateway to happiness. The sign taunts a fool into feeling some sense of achievement that you have reached a destination at the very least. Yet, as the sign states, Darn Moor is merely the measure, a mark, a point on the road where you begin to move closer to the place you really want to be. Darnmore is the home of the Billy Mill family, 3 generations who have lived in this gateway town. Race relations between Indigenous and settler families are fraught, though the rigid status quo is upheld through threats and soft power rather than the overt violence of yesteryear. As progress marches forward, Darnmore and its surrounds undergo rapid social and environmental changes. But as some things change, some stay exactly the same. The Billy Mill family are watched and sometimes visited by ancestral spirits and spirits of the recently deceased, who look out for their descendants and attempt to help them on their right path. When the town's secrets start to be uncovered, the community will be rocked by a violent act that forever shatters a century of silence. Full of music, Uwalaray language, I'm sure I've mispronounced that, and exquisite description, Song of the Crocodile is a lament to choice and change and the unyielding land that sustains us all, if only we could listen to it. So that sounds amazing. So yeah, glad to have this one in my collection and hopefully get to it very, very soon. All right, I'm going to show you the next 2 together as well, because they're 2 books by the same author, though they were purchased on 2 separate second-hand foraging expeditions. So the first one I picked up was this one, A Room Made of Leaves by Kate Grenville, and I was very excited to find this one for $4. Let me just see when this one was published. It was published in 2020. And when I read the synopsis of it, I was very excited for it. So it says, what if Elizabeth MacArthur, wife of the notorious John MacArthur, wool baron in the earliest days of Sydney, had written a shockingly frank secret memoir? And what if novelist Kate Grenville had miraculously found and published it? That's the starting point for A Room Made of Leaves, a playful dance of possibilities between the real and the invented. Marriage to a ruthless bully, the impulses of her heart, the search for power in a society that gave women none. This Elizabeth MacArthur manages her complicated life with spirit and passion, cunning and sly wit. Her memoir lets us hear at last what what one of those seemingly demure women from history might really have thought. At the centre of A Room Made of Leaves is one of the most toxic issues of our own age, the seductive appeal of false stories. This book may be set in the past, but it's just as much about the present, where secrets and lies have the dangerous power to shape reality. So, Elizabeth MacArthur was the wife of John MacArthur, who was one of the early, I forget what his title is, the boss of Sydney? That's definitely not the official title. The dude in charge. He was the guy in charge of Sydney. I think he was not the first one, he was maybe about the third one or something along those lines. Or somewhere in that vicinity. An early one anyway. And he is responsible for a lot of the building works and so on. Like that happened during his tenure in that position. And Elizabeth MacArthur is a known figure. Like she was someone who was very actively involved with her in her husband's endeavours, so she wasn't she wasn't an entirely background character in Australia's history. But yeah, so this is interesting to me because I know a little bit about Elizabeth MacArthur, but this will definitely be something new to sort of like get into her kind of story. And by the same author, I picked up a book again that I have already read, and that is Restless Dolly M by Kate Grenville. So this one is a book that she wrote, and it was nominated for the Women's Prize. So I'm guessing it was a 2023. Yes, 2023. So it was nominated and shortlisted for this year's Women's Prize, and not everybody loved it, but I really enjoyed it. It wasn't a 5-star, but I think I might have given it 4 or 4.5 stars. I can't recall, but I will link up in the cards to the video where I reviewed this book. But yeah, this was a really good read for me. This is a book that's based on the life of Kate Grenville's actual grandmother, who she had a bit of a difficult relationship with, and her impression of her from childhood was that she was a really difficult woman. And I guess what she was trying to do with writing this book was to kind of reimagine, or to like look at the evidence of what happened in her life, like the things that we know, and to sort of fill in based on what we know of the times and the role of women in those times, and you know what would have been possible and not possible for women at that time. And I think that must have been a very healing process for Kate Grenville, because I think she's done a great job of kind of contextualizing how this woman came to be perceived as very difficult by other people. But I think one of the things that people didn't like about this book was the portrayal of the character. So they didn't find her likable. I did find her likable in the end. Like I felt like the context really gave her likability, and I could understand why she made the decisions she made and why she became sort of a hard person. So yeah, I thought it was a great book, and I now have a copy because the copy I was reading came from the library. I listened to it on audiobook, and that was a really good choice too. But now I've got my physical copy to go along with that. And the very last book that I picked up was a classic, and that is The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. This is a really lovely edition, so I think I paid about $6 for it, but it's a hardback. It's got a really beautiful cover, and it's also it has illustrations, little illustrations on certain pages, and it's just a really nice edition. And also there are colour plates inside kind of sporadically. So yeah, I was really pleased to find this. I haven't read the whole of the Canterbury Tales, but I did read a little bit of it for uni back in the old days at good old Sydney Uni English 101. We definitely read a few of the tales for that. So yeah, that was the last time I tried to read any of the Canterbury Tales, but yeah, now really glad to have this in my classics collection, so very pleased with that. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and if you think I should prioritise them on my TBR. I'm always happy to have those kind of recommendations from you in the comments, so please feel free to let me know. Also, if you have not yet subscribed and you would like to have more bookish content, please feel free to subscribe as well. I do book hauls, book reviews, I sometimes do vlogs, reading vlogs and other bookish content sporadically throughout the year as well. And also I am hosting a couple of challenges. The links for those are down in the description as always. So thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye!